So a formal welcome to everyone who just joined us. So welcome to the first workshop that happens to be in the new series that De Gruyter has created, the Academic Libraries Reimagined. So it is created purely just to foster knowledge sharing within the library community, and of course with anyone who will be interested in the topics that we're presenting. So before we get started, we'd just like to let you know a couple of house rules. Your audio and video will be turned off at all times during this session. To ask a question, you can type it into the chat box and we'll address them at the end. This session will be recorded. It will be about 60 minutes long, and the videos and slides will be circulated to all the registrants after the event. If you have any questions that is not answered, feel free to contact the marketing team at the APAC De Gruyter. So now let me share the agenda and speakers for today. So we have Ms. Roxanne from Australian National University talking about revitalizations of the library literature and information service, followed by Ms. Gabby Wong on evolutions of research support service. And after which we will have some time set aside for Q&A. And of course, I would like to let you know, do stay with us until the end, because there will be a sneak preview of the next workshop in this series. So with that, I will now pass over to Ms. Roxanne to start the presentation.
Thank you very much. I will now share my screen, and all the technology is going to work beautifully because we practiced with great success. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Lovely. So thank you very much. So our topic for today is really how we've been revitalising our library services, meeting the critical challenge and leaping across the waterfall without falling into the water in a big heap, but rising from that. So this is one of the images from our collection in the Noel Butland archive. And we've digitised many of the photographs, which of course has turned out to be a godsend in these times of challenges in COVID-19. So thank you for having me today. And I want to start by acknowledging and celebrating the first Australians on whose traditional airways and lands we meet today, and pay our respect to the elders of those lands, past and present. And I'm joining you today from the land of the Ngunnawal people, land that was never fully ceded. So thank you for having me, and on we go to talk about some of the great challenges that are addressing us. It's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? We've continued to evolve libraries over many, many years and taken new opportunities, and all of a sudden we had one of the greatest opportunities of all, and we have to think of it positively, in the last 24 months with COVID-19. But this sits within a much broader framework, in particular within higher education. We've really seen profound changes in scholarly ecosystem. We've moved from the days when data was captured and transmitted through very traditional means, with the library as the hub of that knowledge, to online environments where information is everywhere, where information is of highly variable character, but its accessibility has been the prime driver that many of our, in particular our students, have come to value. And when they come to the university, their expectation is that they will have information at their fingertips on every topic that is needed with ease. And education is a transformative experience for them in terms of the knowledge they get, but it is an opportunity as well for our libraries to transform their knowledge of information and the capabilities that they need in order to deal successfully with a complex world. So we've seen a continuing trend to online education first, which of course has escalated in the last 2 years. We've seen our responsibilities change. So connecting our clients, our readers to knowledge has become more complex. The templates that we have to deliver have become more diverse, and the management systems that we need to put in place to deliver that have also become more complex. And concurrently, there's a challenge in that people expect it to be simpler. They expect it to be online, they expect it to be complex. And when we talk to them about the diversity of different interfaces, the diversity of requirements and controls, the diversity of what is available for the delivery systems, it is often surprising to our academics and to our students. So we are dealing in a very complex area. We are dealing in an area where publishing has changed, where the differences between disciplines, the difference between nations, we speak in a region where digital publishing is highly variable. So we teach in Asian studies at ANU, and many of the sources that people need are not digital, but it is a continuing changing world, and juggling these two environments in that sort of hybrid world is very complex. So we've seen, continuing transformation, but we've seen challenges that we've had to have in the psyche that we have in libraries, in the way we address our strategies, and the expectations that we have from our community. So I've included, again, a photograph here from our Noel Buckland Archives of Labour of the Printing Industries Employee Conference, New South Wales Sub-Branch, 1921, when, dare I say, printers were printers, men were men. Probably most of them came from Scotland, and it was a very disciplined world. In that environment, libraries had the benefit of having many copies of materials. It was a distributed collection. We had traditional processes of interlibrary lending, and everyone knew that material would be accessible because the libraries had, if you like, control of the ecosystem in terms of the resources that were produced and the management that needed to happen. In the digital environment, it is different and it is complex. We're often relying on a copy being held by a publisher so that there's one central copy rather than distributed copies. We see business decisions that can radically change the way that our community and we access resources. Microsoft closed its ebook store, within a week really of the announcement being made. We see journals where the editorial committees decide that they will be with one publisher one day and another publisher the next, and trying to keep up with providing access in this changing environment is a very different process for us. And it's one where we really need new sets of skills and new approaches. For many as well, pricing may change access. So the community comes with expectations of stability. And we are, in fact, in an area of high flux where creativity, relationships with publishers, relationships with those readers that we seek to serve needs to be an area of continual communication rather than the sort of stable environment that we've come to this world with a mindset for and with a set of tools built around that. So we've had these changes, they've been going on. I remember when the Australian National Bibliographic Database went online in 1983, we had internet lending systems, we had increasing material made available digitally. And so the expectations changed steadily. We moved to print preferred, but we had the radical game changer. We had COVID-19, which meant our connections with readers, our connections with the world became radically different because, as we've been discussing, lockdown comes, then we think we're over it again, then the Delta strain comes and lockdown comes again. So this sort of on again, off again change has meant a real discussion with our community and a different change in the way that they suddenly realise our services are critical. And in our universities, the discussion has turned to education in ways for which we in research-based universities have not seen before. So it's been a real transformation to reinterpret, re-understand the importance of education and re-understand the importance of the student experience. And our role in that has been quite profoundly important to universities. So how have we sought to reinvent ourselves? How have we taken the steps that will give us new value in this changing environment and led us to recognise how we can provide needs in new and different ways? So I want to take a couple of perspectives thinking about how our community has suddenly realised that a number of the services which to a degree have been invisible before are actually fundamental for higher education to achieve what it needs to achieve. So for students, the change was more critical than anyone else really in our community. So they were, to a large part, moving to online education, and some of us were able to do hybrid teaching at various times. But I think fundamentally it has changed the expectations of what education will be. And in most of our institutions, we talk about hybrid education for the future, because it has in fact allowed us to deliver a wonderful range of services in different ways, but has actually meant that we have reshaped to a large degree the way we have thought about the whole corpus of delivery of courses within any degree, so that it's been reshuffled in a way that we didn't quite achieve with flipped learning. And in flipped learning, it was about the lecture was online and people could self-pace, and the laboratories and tutorials were where engagement happened. Now it's been, well, we have to actually be creative and engaged in a new way, because it is only digital for a period of time or for the whole experience of a student doing a degree. So what are the things that we've seen in terms of the surveys that we've done, the interactions that we've seen with students? From the university's perspective, the feedback from students has been that a sense of connection with their university was what was most critical to them. So they needed to engage, they needed to feel they were part of a university, and dare I say, as our students say to us, email is not something the younger generation use. Email is not where our students are living. They've needed us to step up and engage with them in a whole range of different ways to be able to continue their journey as part of the membership of the higher education sector and individual institutions. Innovation has been a real focus. So we've seen virtual labs, we've seen a whole range of different education services, but we've seen libraries be more innovative than they have been, I think, in the last 20 years. So with libraries, we've looked at innovations as a way of delivering our what had been face-to-face services, innovations as a way of suddenly sharing collection access in new and different ways. And we've implemented services that in essence we have trialled and then in many cases turned into business as usual services. So perhaps the classic to demonstrate this innovation and this outreach has been the click and collect service. So for most of us, we have significant collections that remain in print, older material that may never be available digitally, material that was published in short runs, material that was published by small community presses that will never be available digitally. And providing a way of accessing that collection has really meant that the heartbeat of the university can continue. So I thought I would give you a little couple of Facebook posts, in fact, from 2 students that we delivered to in the last couple of weeks, and what they speak to us in terms of the value of that service is it reminds them that they are physically connected to the university. So as the library, not only are we providing them access to knowledge, but we're actually giving them an ability to be physically connected. And Eleanor, when our associate director delivered the books to her doorstep, took up the books and hugged them and said, you know, the university is living and delivering to me. And this is a new set of ways of values for the university that really we hadn't articulated in the same way, that physically having us connect them to the collection connects them to the university. So in terms of the new understanding of needs, I mentioned before that I think that education was ticking along in our universities, and we were looking at innovation, as I said, in terms of educational learning, but the libraries had been seen absolutely as the provider of the key resources for students to use and a space in some institutions to study, but we'd not really articulated that higher strategic role of that connection of the students to the university, nor of the value in student experience. So the overall university studies that are done of students every couple of years in our institution, the Student Barometer and the International Student Barometer, always have a question on libraries. Libraries do quite well because students love libraries. Some of them talk to us about living their lives in the library because they can find a quiet space to study when if they're in a shared house, they may not be able to find the privacy, but this demonstrated to the university the value of all of those services. So one of the different things in terms of student engagement with universities was how we could rethink the spaces for study. So when we're not in lockdown, universities have often really seen that libraries were places for quiet study with a group room so students might come in and do an assignment. When the world was turned on its head and learning was only online, then students really had a very different relationship with the library. So they would come in and they would experience part of that joint learning together by listening together to the presentations that were being given, by participating together in small groups rather than the large groups in a tutorial. And they actually rethought and reshaped our spaces to support that learning so that they could have that double benefit of education and connected communities. We had to change our spaces quite quickly. We actually opened up another whole floor in our science library to accommodate that new form of study. And it really gave great visibility to the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic, who's responsible for teaching, and also to the academic community, that space needed to be rethought to evolve to meet the needs of students, and that libraries were the favoured places by students. They had the ambience, they were safe spaces, and rethinking these spaces really extended our role in a new and different way. And I've talked about extending collection access. Of course, we all bought lots of digital material, and that really revolutionised quite a lot of the teaching because they could embed material in a new way and reinterpret it. So for the academic community, rethinking and reshaping our role came very quickly. We've traditionally all worked with academics, partnered with them in building collection, and we've done that quite successfully. Because we've done this for many, many years, often that connection is light because we're just looking at the new material that we buy rather than thinking about the whole corpus of knowledge for any discipline or for any course. For academics, it was really of high value to engage with us, and we had more conversations with academics during the time in COVID, I think, than we'd had for 5 to 10 years before then, because they all needed to rethink their resources. We collaborated with them in collection building. We had immediate partnerships to extend the collection by acquiring some new material, by digitising some new material, particularly using the provision of the Copyright Act, which allows us to digitise material and make it accessible, providing it passes the 3-step test. And we actually created new relationships with the creators of some material that we had to digitise because we were able to discuss with them the academic need. And many were thrilled and in fact asked us to digitise additional material that they had created, and that will be used in further courses. So in terms of having that partnership with education, we also did more embedded teaching than we had before. So particularly in science and in law, we'd been offering embedded courses where we would be part of a program, and we would come in and give a lecture about the resources that were relevant to that discipline. There would be an assignment. Students would use our lib guides, would use our advice to go and research in a field. And that embedded teaching really was recognised to be of even higher value in an environment where people couldn't have access to physical collections. So they realised that actually finding material was of high value and being able to understand information resources and publishing. So this gave us a new dimension to expand our services. It also gave us a new dimension to expand the skills and capabilities of our staff to be able to deliver those in a really valuable way. We had strong engagement on developing academic capabilities and digital literacy of students, and we ran courses outside the education programs that were highly valued by the academics. In law, we used to run a Zoom at noon on Thursdays to be able to connect the community to resources. They were also recorded so people could self-pace. That was promoted and of high value to the academic community. So in this dimension, we were engaging in new and different ways. We were rethinking our services so people could really develop not just access to the resources they needed in order to finish an assignment, but actually develop those capabilities for life. So you would think that space, when we had primarily online learning, that space for academics would not be an area where the value of libraries changed or increased. But in fact, we had significantly increased engagement and support for the academic community through this time. For many academics, they didn't have the equipment to do the recordings that they needed to do for their students. So we had a couple of areas in the university that set up laboratories that enabled staff to come in even during the lockdown if they could be declared essential staff, and to actually do that recording. In the libraries, we had the one button studio so that very professional recordings could be made, and literally you bring the USB in and press the button. We also had Echo 360 recording facilities installed on some computers in study rooms so that the academics could come in. They could book the rooms, come in, do their recordings, edit them if needed be, and then be able to deliver them in their programs. So the library was seen as great value because we were accessible, we were in good places in the campus, they knew they could get support from library staff, and the equipment was available to them. And that was probably something we didn't think would be such an area of rethinking our spaces, but it was high value, and we have done that again now that we're in lockdown in Canberra. We went into lockdown about 3 weeks ago. The other area where the university became aware of the benefit of the library in terms of space and facilities was examinations. So at ANU, we moved to online examinations for a small range of exams. And again, the challenge was finding spaces. So traditionally, we have very large spaces that are heavily occupied for examinations. But the nature of COVID-19 was that with social distancing, we needed to have spaces that would accommodate small numbers of students, and library facilities were used for these. We became an active part of the examinations committee working group that had representatives from all of the major teaching faculties in the university, the Centre for Learning Teaching, and the Division of Student Administration. And we were a part of the front line of delivery of services, but most importantly, we were also a part of the thinking space around what would it be and how could we have a good student experience. Got to say, introducing online examinations is very complex. There are lots of issues around ensuring everyone is comfortable with that, academics and students. But again, the university took the step of finding what was best, and we are reevaluating that this year, and the university library continues to be part of the working group. So these are some of the changes that we've seen in the people you would immediately think were really quite critical for us. So we rethought our space, we rethought our collection, we rethought our services for students and for academics. But we also took the opportunity to rethink our spaces in terms of the broader missions of the university and the broader remit of the library. So really this close down, if you like, of the world was an opportunity for us to say what are some of the important things in terms of value to the university that we can bring, and we can do that uniquely because of our position as knowledge managers within the university. So we looked at Harthy Trust to see the material that had been produced by the various centres and departments and areas within the university. And ultimately, we released through Harthy Trust over 3,000 publications of the university. So we did some consultation, looked at the copyright legislation and gave permission for Harthy Trust to make these openly available to the world, increasing access to the work of our scholars, increasing the reputation of the university through making these works accessible. And it was really wonderful for us to be able to achieve that. And I think if we hadn't had the COVID-19 pandemic, we wouldn't have put our time and effort into this as promptly. So that really gave a remarkable value to the university in terms of their engagement and impact from the work of the university library and from our connectivity to repositories around the world. Harthy Trust was really terrific for us. We also looked at how we could reshape our data support at a time when people were off campus and still had access to all of their devices and were in essence moving from doing the lab work to writing up, something that our researchers tell us they don't enjoy doing, but they were doing that so they needed to manage their data. So we'd had a project for a while to completely rebuild the ANU data commons, which we were responsible for, and we were able to finish that off. In terms of also being able to record the experience and decisions of the university to make a scholarly record for scholars themselves, current and future, we established the ANU COVID-19 archive. So we collected the ANU's response to the pandemic. We collected the administrative decisions of the universities, the vice-chancellors, blogs and emails, and the key public communications from the university. We also collected or made accessible the data that we collected in our institutional repository around COVID-19 research. And as well, we asked the community to document their views of what the campus was like during this time and what their COVID-19 experience was. And we had some fabulous photographs from students of the empty campus. So we took the opportunity to provide a value to the university to be part of the creation of a resource that recorded our experiences and brought them forward for the next generation of researchers. So in fishing for new solutions, we really tried to look at what was of value and how we could respond and use our existing infrastructure and extend that. But one of the most important things is that it is collaboration that takes us through this. So it was a joint problem within the university, but also a joint problem within the scholarly ecosystem. So we thought it was really important to learn from the past, to look at digital solutions that engaged us across the university, to look at that new emphasis on education, to engage with educators and also decision makers around education, and look at ways we could engage in research that would support the time. And that collaboration gave a value and a visibility to the activities of the university library, which I think means that we are at the table now more often than we have been in the past. We also understood that in order to respond to these times, we needed to increase our capabilities. So we developed a program to increase the digital capabilities of staff, ranging from straightforward areas such as how can we use Zoom properly, how can we use Teams properly, to how can we actually improve our digital education skills so that we can continue to evolve the service offering that we have. Development was a real focus. So in addition to the courses that we had, and nearly every staff member completed at least 2 of the modules that we offered, and they were available on a self-paced basis as well as online, we made development a focus. So we had staff who couldn't do some of the physical things when they were away from the campus that they could do when they were on the campus. So we took that time to start reskilling our workforce. We also took the opportunity to strengthen our knowledge of initiatives such as open education resources to see how we could work with academics. Because in this complex world where some things were just not available in the same way as they had been in print, we had the opportunity to explore with them ways to help them navigate through this new ecosystem and have access to material that was vital for their activity, particularly in relation to education. We also looked at how we should increase our capabilities in terms of understanding the physical collection, and understanding the physical collection in terms of what we could digitise, what we could deliver, what we could make accessible through other library collections, and how we could deliver that in new and different ways. We're at the stage now where we know we need to rethink our discovery and delivery services as well, because we've had a range of software solutions. We've had our single search, we've had our library management system suite of products. And when you look at them with the eyes of a completely off-campus experience, some of those were not up to the expectations of our clients. So we've had to rethink that, which I think will give us quite a long tail of activities to move forward and to continue to rethink. So in another 12 months, we'll have done a lot more rethinking in this space. Finally, I wanted to emphasise that it's been really important for us to take a global vision, and I think many university libraries have benefited from taking a global vision as well. So there will be more challenges. The pandemic is not over, and other challenges will happen in the future. And we've been thinking through how our citizens and academics can be global citizens in the scholarly ecosystem, how they can go beyond our walls. So we worked with the International Alliance of Research Universities, which includes the National University of Singapore, University of Tokyo, and Peking University, and it's a network of 11 universities around the world, to actually say, well, what are our strengths? What are our existing digitised collections? How can we make that more accessible to all of our students and our academics? And we put together a guide about the support and the services that were being offered at the time by those university libraries to help us all understand individually what could be done, and to help us collaborate and think about how our collections could be stronger. So my final comment, I wanted to use the words of Nelson Mandela, who said, the greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. So every time we have a crisis, every time we have an opportunity, or we have something that we don't think is helping our clients as much as we can, being innovative, taking the opportunity to rethink our services, experimenting, learning from our colleagues, sharing information will help us rise again in a new and different way. And I'd really like to thank De Gruyter for organising this event, because I think it's incredibly beneficial for us to share that information, to share our ideas and continue to learn from each other. And with that, thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to the rest of this event, and I look forward then to questions and comments from you as we go through the rest of this seminar. Thank you very much. And I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now can we have Ms. Gabby to start her presentation?
Sure, let me share my screen. So good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure here today to share the stories of HAUSD developing our research support. While Roxanne's presentation was about like having the pandemic as the foreground of how that shapes the library services and exploring new ways. In my part, the pandemic is more in the background. So the message I want to bring to you today is these. The first set is about research support services that, our story is one example, but then this is not a model. In fact, there is no standard model and no best model for research services research support services provided by the library. And I also want to share with you one tool that we find quite useful to help us plan. So I'll share that too at the second part of my sharing. So these are the 2 points I want to bring up. So a few slides about UST for those especially who are not from Hong Kong. So HAUST, we are at the east part of the territory. So you can see from this map that we are by the sea. We're quite young. We are going to celebrate our 30th anniversary this year. And while Roxanne shared a lot of warm feeling old photos from the archives, I can share some bright looking sea view photos. So this is our campus. And you can see some of the outside look, and then this one in the middle is the inside of the interior look of the library. So these few figures give you some idea what our university scale is like, the student body, student size, faculty size, and some other numbers to give you an idea of what HKUST is like in terms of scales. So now going to the meat of my sharing, the research support services at HAUSD Library. Currently, we have 5 focal service areas. So these are the 5 areas, including research data, resources and tools for researchers, scholarly communication, research impact analysis, and research output management, the 5 areas, the 5 focal service areas. To give you a little bit more details about this very vague term, so research data, we're talking about RDM and DMP writing, resources and tools for researchers, including citation management tools, our library traditional service of literature search, data analysis and visualization, scholarly communications, of course, we're talking about publishing, and one big part is OA publishing. And then research impact analysis, we're talking about bibliometrics, author level metrics, and institutional level metrics. And of course, research output management is about repository. So these are the 5 focal service areas we have now. And so who are providing this service? The core team here that coordinate this service is what we call the RSS, Research Support Services team. And we also work closely together with our technology team, the systems team, and the information services team. So we are not the only librarians or only a team doing this. We are a network of colleagues providing research support services. And within our core team, we have 3 professional librarians, 2 support staff members, and 1 research assistant. So now this is a brief story of how we formed our unit of research support services. So in fact, this unit was founded only in August 2018. So in fact, half of our history is during pandemic time. So let me give you the brief, like a go through of our development. So before 2018, of course, the library did have research support services. It's not completely brand new. Research support in a way is a core mission of library. So we are already, before that, we had all along, we had some library classes for postgraduate students. we had the first IR in Hong Kong, started 2003. And we also had the data repository, and then we did ORCID integration. So you can imagine, if you were in my place, you can imagine during 2018 when we formed this group, this new unit. So the first thing I had to do is to coordinate these existing services among different units. And then we also set the scope for this new team. And at the same time, that year, we initiated our research data services project that we got some small funding from the university to help us get some, something jump starting. So, and also I rolled out a blog for researchers. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And during 2019, we designed our instruction program under the 4-theme structure. We organized research data management capacity building, and we also piloted our DMP platform. In 2020, we organized, keep going the RDM in-house training, and we further enrich our instruction program. And now this year, we focused some work on OA publishing agreement that the teams helped to support that. And we did some DMP focus groups, and we conducted a recent campaign to ingest accepted manuscript into the IR. So these are some key steps in our development, and I want to highlight a few things. One is the blog that we created for researchers, and then the other is the program, the instructional program that we put together, and also the DMP. First is the blog. Now, this is what we call the research bridge. In fact, is a WordPress-based blog platform that we published with short articles once every week during term time on all kinds of researchers in related information. So this is our major platform to keep our communication with our researchers at all levels. And our program, again, I give you a web link here. Our program is, as I mentioned at the beginning, we consolidated what we had been doing before 2018, and then we shaped it into 4 major themes. So with these themes, we continue to develop our program. And then the DMP template, we built a USD template for DMP writing, and we first tested it on our local experiment sandbox, but now we are ready to move on from sandbox to DMP tool. So that's something later we'll do this term. So that was the fact, what we have done, what our services are. And then now I'm going to go a little bit into our experience in building the service. So I can say during these 3 years in developing the team and the service, there were lots of unknowns, of course. So unknowns including what is actually research support services. And then new services, of course, require new knowledge, skills, abilities, but what are they? And also what do our users need in terms of research support? So there are many unknowns. And then in the past few years, we also face a lot of setbacks. So there are many ideas that hit their ends. And of course, staff capacity is always an issue. Computing resources always an issue. And the realities is that we also learned that some services have faster or higher ROI, return on investment. For example, the program, the PG postgraduate teaching program, I would say that one has a higher return on investment. So because we already have our teaching workshops, topics before, so we consolidate them and we build on them further. So seems like we top up with a little effort, and then now it's a fairly successful program. But some other projects may have a longer harvesting time. So for example, the blog I mentioned, that took some time to build a critical mass for our audience to feel interested to subscribe, to follow our blog posts. And of course, we need many trial and error. And then you expect and accept failures. I think that's very important. Now, I want to move a little bit faster here. This is a brief comparison of RSS or research support with traditional library services. Now, let me look at it this way. In terms of service model, I would say the research support services is more context sensitive compared with traditional services. That means as research support librarian, we need to know more about our research community. In terms of staffing, I think this kind of new service require more professional staff in comparison with traditional ones. And also the staff capacity is also interesting that we, because there are lots of new and emerging practices in the area. So our team need to be very active to learn, keep continuously learning. So these are some sort of lessons I learned from our experience here. So as I said, I would want to share the planning matrix, the tools we use at HKUST. Hopefully that tool can also help you do a little bit of your planning. So in fact, it's something very simple. It's a matrix or a table. So in the columns, we have different areas, that I call the what area, what services you want to provide. And then the rows are what I call the hows, right? The service channels, how you provide those services. So as you can see, the columns are the 5 major areas I mentioned before. And these rows, these hows are just, any library services we are doing. This is what we're good at, we've been doing. So we help people with providing instruction, providing guides, etc., etc. Okay, so these are not that new. We just need to take up what we've been doing. So how I use this matrix, for example, currently 2021, our research support services portfolio look like this. So for these 5 different areas, instruction, we have PG classes for these 4, and resource guides, we have resource guides that cover all 5 areas. In-person service, we have citation search service for impact analysis, and we also help our researchers ingest the research output into repository. Infrastructure, only we focus on data and research output, which is our repository. And for outreach, we have our blog that we call Research Bridge. Advocacy, this year we haven't planned anything, or we are not actively doing that. So this is our snapshot of this year. If I use this matrix, we can see very clearly what we are doing, why and how, why we're doing, what we're supporting and how we're supporting them. So with this matrix, I can also see new possibilities. Now the red remarks on this chart are the possible ways that we can think about in the future. For example, for data, for example, we may consider doing DMP writing consultation. For advocacy, we can promote more OA publishing within our communities under the research, under the scholarly communication area. So this matrix helps us to focus, to think about what actual action you can include in your portfolio of services. So now I want to throw the ball to you. How do you support research in your institution? Say, think about what are the focal areas of your existing services. Now, this chart shows like I showed you this in previous slides, but are you doing these? And do you have new ones that you want to include your new service area or new service areas that, in your institution are important, but not in my 5 columns? And then I expect if we now, this is something we cannot do in a online event, that if we are in face-to-face, we can have some exchange and we can see each of you probably have a very different picture of your area. And this brings back to what I said earlier, is that research support is very context sensitive. So there's no single best model. So what is important is that you consider your own institution environment, you consider where your researchers need help the most, and also the capacity of your staff people, your own people, and what kind of resources you have. Of course, your library vision and priority. And then, so to build your matrix, you can repeat what I did before, list out your columns in your service focal areas, and list out your how you provide services, and build your matrix. And you can use your matrix to plot your current services, map out new possibilities, think about what you want to do, what you need to do, and identify strengths and gaps. So, and also always remember your institutional context. So that brings to a summary of my message here is that there's no standard model. What I shared in this short presentation is what we did at HKUST. You can think about yours, but then it's most important that you think about the context of your own institution. And hopefully the little simple matrix I shared with you could help you with the planning. I think I'll skip the pandemic effects. I guess what I want to highlight here is that I guess the pandemic is not over yet. So how we come out of this in the context of research support services planning, I think for librarians, it's very important that we think about how the researchers' workflow and work environment are changing or will change throughout this pandemic time. And then the last thing I want to throw to you is to looking ahead, what is important is service assessment. Okay, we develop the services, but then it's important for you to think about how to assess your service quality, what is worth investing, and how you find out, are you doing the right thing? And what part is good to keep going and what part needs improvement. So that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Let me run through the chat box. And there is someone who commented that it's a really interesting and informative seminar. So thank you to both the speakers. There is a question for Gabby. Do you find it easier to build your research support team through reskilling existing staff versus hiring new staff?
I think that is a hypothetical question because I never had the experience of hiring new staff completely to build a new team. Our experience here is that we, in fact, I shouldn't say it, it's not, in a way, it's not either or, because our experience here is that we started the team as a small team with existing colleagues. And then we gradually explored our research area, explore what we could do. And then we also gradually get new colleagues in. So we have a combination now, we have a combination of colleagues who've been here before we had this team and colleagues who joined this team as new members. I don't think there's a simple answer to this. I guess really it depends on a lot of other variables. There's no yes or no, A or B answer.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions here, but while there is some typing going on, I'm going to just share the information on the next session that we have in this series with the attendees who have joined us today. Right, so the next workshop for this series is going to happen on the 2nd November at the timing stated on the slides. So we do have university librarians from the National University of Singapore and the University of Sydney joining us during that session. You will get the invitations after this event alongside with the video recordings and the PowerPoint slides. So do register and reserve a spot if it interests you. And also if there is any librarians who want to participate in this series as a speaker or recommend a colleague who would have some expertise or knowledge to share with the community, do feel free to contact me. And let me have a look at the chat again. So yes, we do have a couple more questions. So let me see. There is one that says that in terms of staff recruitment, do you hire staff with no library qualifications? I think this could be open to Gabby or Roxanne.
Roxanne, what do you think?
So we hire staff with a diverse range of qualifications. Increasingly in our digitisation area and digital scholarship area, we have been hiring staff that have had more digital expertise, but by far and large, most of the staff in the library have a form of library qualification, and we encourage staff, if they come in and they don't have a qualification, we support them to do library training. So a diversity, I guess, is what I'd say.
There's one question for Gabby. Does your library research team also work with the research services of the university? The background is that at their university, they lead the library research services and work closely with the research services team. So just wondering if that is the case for HKUST and how does that work?
I think, yeah, definitely that's something with research support services is we do have to work closely with the research administrators in the campus. And that also come into what I mentioned, the context, because I think each institution have their own kind of research administration context. So I guess for the librarians, really the first thing you need to find out is who they are, where they are, what they do, and what do they care. I think it's most important is what do they care. So throw out just a quick example for Michaela is that say our research, what we call the research office at HKUST, they are the unit that manage a research grant. So obviously what they care most about is research grant and then the applications and management and research output management. So we work closely with them on this particular area. So yeah, it's important to actually know to map out your network in the campus. That's very important.
Okay. A question from Roxanne about digitizing through IT trust. It would be nice if you could give more information about this OA option.
Certainly. Well, I should start by saying we were absolutely surprised how many ANU scholarly products had already been digitised and were available on Harthy Trust. It was an extraordinary range of research papers, reports, journals, books. And so what we did was ask Harthy Trust to give us a report of everything that had ANU or Australian National University in the record. They gave us those records, we looked through them, and then there's a form that you have to fill in to have them made available fully, openly through their OA agreement. And they are remarkably helpful. If you're interested, email Harthy Trust and they will be able to give you a report of everything that has already been digitised that your university is associated with.
Okay, let's give the attendees another minute to see if there's any more questions coming through. But in any case, the context for our speakers will be shared. They have shared it at some point in their slides, but we will share them again in the email that is sent to you after the event. So I don't have any more questions coming through. So I'm going to end the session and extend my appreciation to Roxanne and to Gabby. And I hope to see all of you back again in our next workshop. Thank you so much and have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.